I would like to invite Cephus, Uncle Bobby Johnson up front, Terry Thaxton, Yolanda Hurt.
She just texted, hey Alex, when I said she wasn't coming up.
Okay, all right. Do we have any other family members?
Yeah, Victor, you want to talk to Victor?
Well, again, let me introduce myself for those that have come in a little later. I am affectionately known to the community as Uncle Bobby. I am Oscar Grant's uncle. Again, his mother was my baby sister. Oscar was my very first nephew. Anyhow, thanks for spending this evening with us. And I usually don't sit through. I'm a little twisted for words right now, so hopefully I'll mellow out. But I usually don't sit through the whole movie because it actually throws me off balance. But what I'll do is I'll introduce the other panelists up here. Actually, I'll let them introduce themselves first, and then we have our discussion.
Hey everyone, my name is Victor Ochoa Ignacio.
Terry Thaxton, sister Michael Nida.
I don't know where to start. I'm not sure. You want me to moderate, or are you going to moderate?
Yeah, I want you, but maybe I can start and then we can go ahead. And what I asked Cephus, because he's been in many ways a point person for our discussion, and what Victor Ochoa didn't share is that he is the son of Ignacio Ochoa, killed by LA County Sheriff's Department. Terry Thaxton, sister of Michael Nida, killed by the Downey Police Department. And what we want to do here is to begin to talk about what is real. The reality of what we saw here, but this is nothing compared to the pain that Cephus or Victor or Terry have experienced. And perhaps a good place to start is with the narrative. What happened? I think that perhaps would be sort of the truest and fairest way of beginning. And then I'd like for Cephus to begin sort of the moderating, because this is not just a moment in time where we share a movie. It's about what's happening next week. And beyond that as well. So perhaps if I can begin with Terry, and then to give it to Victor, in terms of sharing your story, your experience.
Thank you. My brother Michael Nida was killed by Downey Police October 22nd, 2011. And it's very hard to watch this movie. The first time we saw it in the theater, we boo-hooed through it because there's a lot of similarities. Michael was also unarmed, like Oscar. They held back, his wife wouldn't let her go near him, held back my parents while they put him in the ambulance. Wouldn't let anyone ride in the ambulance to the hospital with them. Wouldn't let us see him at the hospital after he died. And like Oscar, they made him out to be a criminal, which they weren't. They're totally innocent. Michael married his high school sweetheart, was married for 14 years, Nayli, and they had 4 young, beautiful children. He was a carpenter, hardworking man, and that night he was accused of robbery. But Michael would give his last dollar away before he would take anything from anyone, so we knew that the cops were lying right off the bat. When we came up and they said he was a suspect in robbery, they just make up these things. to justify what they're doing. And I have to say that as far as having a video and the killing of Oscar Grant and so many others that are on YouTube, people's cell phones and video cameras, it's a curse and a blessing. You know, we don't have a video of Michael being killed. So in that way, we don't have to see it over and over, and I can't imagine Uncle Bobby and Oscar's mom and family having to see this on film. It's heart-wrenching enough for us. And Oscar wasn't my brother, but it's like seeing my brother killed on the screen. Michael was out on a date with his wife 3 days before his 32nd birthday. They were going to go out with their friends and celebrate, and so he stopped to get gas, ran across the street to the tobacco store, and ran back across, and there was a robbery down the street an hour earlier. Michael didn't know that, and they were looking for two guys in hoodies with tight jeans. Michael had baggy clothes on, polo shirt, ball cap, didn't even match the description of the robbers, but they saw him jaywalking across the street from the tobacco store, so they figured he was guilty. And they chased him down, made him get on the ground. He got on the ground, and then when the officer, Steve Gilley, held an MP5 to his head and said, "I'm going to blow your head off," it scared him. He got up and ran. And that's when he shot him in the back. Steve Gilley shot him 3 times in the back as he was running away. Michael didn't struggle. He didn't yell at the officer. We have the audio tapes. We heard his last words, but we don't have a video. Because in Downey, the video cameras are on the cars, and all the cars were parked out everywhere. So we saw video of the wall, and we did see one of Michael running by, but they did pat him down. Mom reminded me. They patted him down. They knew he wasn't armed. And then after they killed him, they searched the area for 8 hours for a gun or anything that they could find, a knife, just so they could try to justify it. Found nothing, because he had nothing on him. So in the last 3.5 years, we've learned a lot. And a lot of families and a lot of normal citizens don't know that when your loved one gets killed by a cop, you cannot press criminal charges. It's up to the DA. So the only thing the family can do is file a civil lawsuit, which we did, because Michael's 4 children and wife had no caregiver now. So we filed a civil lawsuit. You know, I wish to God that we could put him in jail, Gilley, but the DA cleared him of everything, of every wrongdoing. So he gets a 6-month paid vacation, goes back to work, and gets a promotion. And the family has to live with that for the rest of our lives. If I killed someone, I'd be in jail right now. Right? In prison. Do not pass go, no free pass. But a cop can kill someone and get away scot-free, and all he has to do is say, I was in fear for my life. And that cop that night said Michael turned around and looked at him aggressively as he was running away. That was his justification. And the DA cleared him. So we have been educated through this whole thing, and we have been blessed by many, many other families. We have been blessed by Ignacio's family. We have been blessed by Uncle Bobby and Aunt Beachy. We have been blessed by Alex Salazar, who has been such a staunch supporter of all of the families. And Michael Brown is there all the time at all of our protests. We invited a lot of other families here tonight, but they couldn't make it. But we have been blessed by so many people during these 3.5 years that we wouldn't have met otherwise. So what the enemy had meant for bad, for evil, God has turned it to good, and he has blessed us with these angels. And I can't tell you how awesome it is for us to be able to just hug each other and say, you know what, I know what you're going through. And I remember the day Victor's dad was killed. My family went over there and we just gave him hugs and said, you know what, we know what you're going through and you're not alone. And that's all we can do, because we can't charge the officer, we can't do anything really, but just support each other. And that's what we're here, to support each other and just try to educate the public, try to educate everyone about the difference between criminal and civil. And there was another thing I wanted to just touch on real quick, is the POBAR. I don't know if you guys are aware of the POBAR, or some call it the Leo Bar. It's the Police Officer Bill of Rights, or the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And we've come to learn that this is their ticket to freedom. Their Bill of Rights trumps our constitutional Bill of Rights. We don't have the freedom of free speech. Because if they want to say, no, you got to shut it down, they come and shut us down. And all they have to do is say, I was in fear for my life, and they get away with murder. And that POBAR, I don't know if you know, the ACLU spearheaded that thing back in the 70s with Joe Biden, who is now our vice president. He was a senator back then, or a governor, one of the two. Him and the ACLU decided they wanted to give officers protection against frivolous lawsuits. Well, this is where we are today. Now that POBAR gives them a ticket to freedom. And this is their Achilles heel, and this is what we have to bring down. But the general public, they don't know about this. So we have to educate them. So, thank you.
Well, I wasn't prepared for this, so whatever comes out is from my heart. Sorry. My father, Ignacio Ochoa, he wasn't just like an ordinary dad. And Oscar Grant reminded me of him. The way he was with his daughter is just like the way my dad was with me, you know? He hugged me. We raced to see who was faster. My dad was killed 2 years ago on May 14th. That day, he was at his aunt's house because he was working in the swap meet because he couldn't find a job. No one wanted to hire him, just like Oscar Grant. So he was doing his best so he can support me, my mom, my sister, my little brother. Even though my little brother is not his son, he treated like it was his own son, and he loved him. So he was working at the swap meet on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Saturdays. And on Tuesday night, he slept over my aunt's house, his sister. And that night, he wanted to talk to someone. He texted my mom, saying like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" My mom, that night, she was mad at him. She ignored the text. He told his sister if he wanted to come outside and smoke a cigarette with him because he wanted to talk to him. He wanted to talk to someone. That night, everyone seemed just to ignore him, so he just wanted to, he was thirsty, so because there was nothing to drink or eat at the house, so he told them, "Oh, I'm gonna go down to the store to buy something to drink." And he didn't drive. He didn't have his license and he didn't want to drive without any license because he was afraid of the cops, that they might stop him, that they might arrest him. So he was just riding his bike everywhere, from Norwalk to Paramount to Compton, just to see us. He would ride his bike. And that night he took his bike. He was going to the liquor store to go get a Coke. And on his way over there, there was the sheriff, there was the police, but he didn't know he was on his bike. He had his headphones. He was just listening to music, minding his own business. And when he turned that corner, the cops went behind him. He didn't know, but the cops turned the car this way, and they just ran out and chased him and tackled him. But he was surprised. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And when they tackled him, he was like, he didn't know how to speak English fluently. He was like, ¿Qué estoy haciendo? What am I doing? I was like, was I on the wrong side of the street? Or like, I was like, he was saying sorry, but he was apologizing for something he didn't even know he did. And they just told him to shut up, and they handcuffed him. And he was like, let me go. You know, I have kids. I'm not doing anything wrong. I was just gonna go to the store to get something to drink. They didn't even want to talk to him. They just handcuffed him, and they shot him in the back while he was being handcuffed. They shot him right here, and the bullet went inside, and it stayed inside, and it ripped his intestines, and he was just bleeding internal. So then when they called the ambulance, they took their time. They didn't even come. They were already they already thought he was dead, so they just let him die. And then this guy, he came out through everyone heard the shot, so people started coming out. And this guy, he came out, he's like, hey, what happened? And the cop was just like, hey, get back. And I was like, no, I have Mexican family too, like, what happened? And like, I'm sorry for my language, but this is what the cop said. He said, this is just a fucking Mexican here. And the guy's like, what do you mean, man? I have Mexican in my family. You can't be just saying that. We're all human. And the white guy he was just a Mexican. That's how they see us. Like, not human. And on Wednesday, I got out of school early. I hadn't seen the news or anything. I didn't know anything about it. I went to my girlfriend's house, Ashley, which is here right now. I went to her house to go to my house to watch a movie. And when we were getting there, my whole family was there. And my cousin was there, and she was like, oh, like, we have to tell you something. And I was like, well, what happened? Like, my family never goes over my house, only like for like holidays or anything like that. So everyone was there. And they were like, oh, we need you to sit down. And I was like, for what? Like, just tell me. And they're like, oh, it's about your dad. And I was like, he got arrested, or did something happen? Did he get injured? Is he in the hospital or something? And my aunt told me, she was like, he's been shot. I didn't believe it because he wasn't a gang member or anything. So I was like, what do you mean? Like, they just shot him? Like, no, the cop shot him. And I was surprised because I didn't believe cops would do that, you know? And I was like, well, what happened? And I was freaking out. I was shocked. I couldn't breathe. I just wanted to go see him. And they told me he was shot. I didn't know the story. They didn't want to tell me right there. And my sister was coming home, and while I was crying, we were in shock, and we're like, who's gonna tell? My sister, Kenya, she's right there. And I was like, well, I'm gonna tell her, you know, being her big brother, I can hold her strong and hug her while I tell her. So when she came in, she was like, why is everyone here? And I was like, oh, and I hugged her, and I was like, just everything's gonna be okay, all right? And she was like, what happened? I was like, my dad, he's gone. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, he's been shot. And she didn't believe it was the cops. I was like, the cops shot him for no reason. And she just started crying, and we couldn't believe it. And after that, well, it's 2 years. It's 2 years now. It's gonna be 3 on May 14th. And I just think people should know about this. People think that cops are still good, that they're perfect, they can do whatever they want, it's okay, and it's not. they take loved ones away from us like it's nothing, like if we're toys. Like they're just taking us away. And if we don't do nothing, it's gonna keep happening. And I don't want someone to feel the way I feel. Having to be here talking to you guys about this, it's horrible. And then I was on his birthday and Christmas, I would always be with him. On my birthday, it was just me and him. And now that's gone. And I'm gonna be the first one to graduate from high school, and I wanted him to be there. And when I get married, I wanted him to be there. Now that's been taken away from me by the cops. And I wouldn't want you guys to feel the same way. So we please, I have to speak up. Tell everyone. We have to stop police brutality. Thank you.
Wow. You know where I'm going to start? He talked about a text message. For me, on January 1st, or actually it was December the 31st, which is my sister's birthday. We celebrated, as you can see, at my mother's house, Oscar's grandmother's house, for her birthday. And she did tell Oscar, catch a bar, it would be the safest way to get to the city and back home. But anyway, Oscar was really heavy on my heart. And this is for all of you. He was really heavy on my heart. And so I thought, wow, you know, I'd never ever text Oscar after 12 o'clock. But I went on and I texted him and I told him that God loves him, God loves his family, and Uncle loves him. And about an hour and 20 minutes later, he was murdered. And I am so thankful today that I responded to that text. Anytime a loved one, friend, mama, daddy, cousin, brother, sister, you know, just someone that is heavy on your heart, they can be calling out to you like his father was, to the family. We have to respond because we don't know what your conversation may do because only God knows his destination or her destination. But the fact is that it's for you. And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to tell Oscar that I loved him. Because had I not had that opportunity, when I hit my knees and saw what happened to him, I was extremely angry. I was so angry, I was getting ready to be reckless. You hear what I'm saying? Extremely reckless. But God allowed that spirit to hit me and say, listen what I gave you. And then I had responded and said that I needed to speak to this issue, not just for Oscar, but for every family, every individual that suffered the same pain that he suffered. What I'm telling you, we're at a state of emergency. And if you fail to hear what these families are saying and not respond by getting involved in the movement to stop police terrorism, it is not even about us. It is about these babies in this room. Your babies and your grandbabies. So I always tell all the youth that are in here that it's about you. Because you are the leadership of this movement. Because if you fail to stand up, to speak to this issue, and you think we have it bad now, as the Malcolm X grassroots reported, that every 28 hours a black man, black female, or black child will be somewhere killed in the United States by either a police officer, or one police officer, or a security guard. That's only talking about black folks. If we had the Latinos in there, and we had poor whites in there, and those that are being killed by the police, we reduced that time down to what? Maybe every hour of the day? I know for a fact that it's every 8 hours. But it's even lower than that because we're discovering that there's so many killings happening around this country we don't even know about. So the message to you tonight is to respond and become involved. Now I'm going to share my story. You know, the movie threw me off a little bit, but I'm going to try to, you know, come through so that I can be clear. I'm going to share 3 scenes with you after the murder. But before I even get there, let me clarify some things. Oscar didn't have a fight on that BART train. There was a tussling match. let's clear up some stuff first. And in that tussling match, they just squashed and they went on about their business. But a white community called and said there was a black and Latino gang fight. So Tony Peroni came up on that platform just like in the movie, cussing, threatening, pointing the taser. He was just out of control. And of course, as you saw what happened, he did call Oscar, excuse the children that are in here, a bitch-ass nigger twice before he was murdered. Now, Tony Peroni was 6'2", 250 pounds. Johannes Mesley is 6'7", 270 pounds. When he threw Oscar to the ground, they was on him. Tony Peroni is pushing his face through the concrete floor, cracked the bones in his face. So he was in pain, and he was saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. But before all that happened, you know, he also raised his hands up and said, please don't shoot me. I got a daughter. Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, all on January 1st, 2009. The very flashpoint of what we see happening today. Everything that has happened with Oscar is happening today. So it behooves us to understand how this movement really developed, took off, and what's going on with it. But in the process of that, while Oscar was on the ground, Johannes Mesley, 6'7", 270 pounds, Tony Peroni, 6'2", 250 pounds, he had 600 pounds of officer on his back. When he finally got his hands crisscrossed behind his back, Johannes Mesley stands up, shoots him in the back, and then claims that he thought Oscar had a gun. And that went on and went on and went on. The taser story came in for a defense mechanism so that he wouldn't go to prison for murder. And as we know, the trial now starts. People in Oakland are upset. What we experienced on the video was real painful. But I'm going to give you 3 scenes in the courtroom now. On day 1, Robert Perry, Judge Robert Perry, your judge here in Los Angeles, said to us that if we don't make all of you go away, he'll make this case last 5, 7, or 10 years. If we don't make you go away, in other words, please go home. We can handle this. Don't riot, don't protest, don't speak about it. But if you go home, maybe they'll give us some justice. But we never said that to you. And we are so thankful we didn't. In the middle of the trial, Michael Raines, the defense attorney for Johannes Mesley, took the silhouette of showing how the bullet went through his back to make the argument that Oscar was resisting arrest. He took that silhouette exhibit and he tossed it on the table and said, Your Honor, I want to name it KKK. No rhyme or reason, no alphabetical order, no chronological order, just KKK. And Judge Robert Perry allowed him to make label that as Exhibit KKK, and every news reporter put their head down. And the reason why they did that, because he was admonishing them, telling the inside story of what's happening in the courtroom. I'm only giving you 3 scenes, but it was horrible in there because people were getting arrested because they couldn't believe what was happening in a so-called criminal trial that we thought would be fair.
Justice.
On the last day, Judge Robert Perry said to us, my God, this is not about black and white or race. We just gave you a black president.
He said, my God.
How did he say it, baby?
I said, my God, we just gave you a black president.
My God, we just gave you a black president. This is what the judge said to us. And they even take it even further. When you came back with your verdict, you came back with a guilty verdict on the involuntary manslaughter. We didn't like it. But we knew we had a conviction because you came back with a guilty verdict with the gun enhancement charge, an automatic 10 years, plus the low term on the involuntary manslaughter meant that the minimum he would do would be 12 years. But Judge Robert Perry, the same one that said, my God, we just gave you a black president, said, my God, I made a mistake with my instructions to you. I erred, and therefore I